Today we're with Peter van Lieshout. He's a property owner out at the township of Kunga. Peter, thank you and welcome.
Pleasure, Andy.
It's great to see you, Peter, and to be here at your beautiful, magnificent property. Peter, tell us a little bit about the vision that you've held for this property for a long time now.
Okay, well, I'll just quickly go back 30 years. 30 years ago, I was in Brisbane one day, and to cut a long story short, I was introduced to the idea of a utopian community starting here in the Tweed Valley, and someone asked me to help finance it, which in the long run we ended up buying the whole 3,000 acres here with 7 or 8 other people. And so we had a diverse group of people, all sort of greenies, but also bottom line was there was a committee which ended up fighting a lot, and in the long run I withdrew from the group. And then they kept on fighting for another 10 years, and then eventually they all withdrew, and I ended up with the whole property. So that's to cut a long story short. So in the first place, I was very much interested in the community idea and living a sustainable life even 30 years ago, when it wasn't even fashionable, I suppose. But when I stand back and look at the way the world operates, I just see so much pollution and waste happening, and people, leading fairly unhappy lives, I guess, that I really think that the world's become too complicated. And I saw a vision for my village here that I ended up getting approval for, as a place that has no waste, and where people can grow their own food and just do what is good for the planet, basically. So I had that vision 30 years ago, and I'm still trying to achieve it now, and very frustratingly so, because I don't really get the cooperation from especially government departments that I would like to see.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that it's been a long journey and a frustrating one, and many people could relate to difficulties with the systems being blocked and cultural roadblocks being put in the way. But I do get a sense by talking to you and having a tour of your property that more and more people are coming into a space that's valuing what could be in this area. Maybe you want to just share some of those more positive developments that the Infinite Choices Convention could help build on by bringing more people into those spaces even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, just so you know, that besides the village is actually an area of only 120 acres. But I own another 3,000 acres next to it, and I know I'm biased, but to me it's almost like a Garden of Eden. It's got rainforest, it's got water, it's got native trees and plantation trees, and it's got 260 kilometres of tracks, and already there are up to 200 school kids a week use the property through outdoor education. I have horse riders come here. I have 7 camping grounds right through the property, but the property really is underutilised, and I see a very good connection between the property and the village itself progressing once the property gets better use. And there are also yearly events with off-road bicycle riders. They have events here, and there could be lots of interest groups who could use the property and then support the village, but they need to know about it, and I guess that's the problem. Nobody knows about the property at this stage.
Sure. Well, I'm more than happy to help showcase what you're doing here, because I can see how many organisations with different values could actually value this property and start to utilise it in a way where they are able to create their own utopia. You talked about utopia before. Affordable housing, or a zero carbon impact, or a community profitable small business enterprise network. There's a whole range of development scenarios that you have that are potentially covering all bases.
Yeah.
And that's really your dream, isn't it? It's not necessarily just a village, it's a village plus.
Yeah, and well, the thing is that the village is the start of it all, because well, there's one thing that I have to say, is that the way I see it, that Australians already own the land that's here, and the way things are going at the moment, to have to pay 200,000 or 300,000 for a block of land, I find absolutely ludicrous. And you know, I can present a situation here where, you know, on the basis of, look, you already own this land, you're an Australian. For, like in my example, I've got approval for 400 lots. If 400 people got together and all paid $10,000 each, they would own that village. And then between them, they could work out a way of doing an off-grid village where there's you know, non-polluting dry composting toilets, and obviously the solar and the battery and the having their own gardens and all that. They could end up spending another $30,000 or $40,000 developing each block, and for probably $50,000 they could own a block of land here. But the system doesn't allow for it. The governments and councils just can't get their heads around that this type of thing happening.
Well, maybe then the option that the convention's putting forward and bringing in global systems experts and communication symbiosis experts and others who are able to draw people into a new space that says, this is where we've been blocked, but this is how we unblock, and this is a co-creative pathway. You mentioned 400 people could buy into an eco-village type, but 400 organisations could build a cooperative mentality that says, we are going to co-invest in this. Nursing homes, for example, Indigenous cultural centres of excellence, appreciating Mount Warning. The collective imagination's unlimited if we create the capacity for people to come into that space. And the beauty of what you're doing, Peter, is you're saying, I've got this property, right? A co-contribution mentality, lots of people paying a little and getting a lot, will deliver on all fronts, including your own need for a return on investment for your own property.
Yeah, and the, as you say, interested groups, there could be you know, all the different clubs that are out there in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. They all need a base where they can go to on weekends, and if they have somewhere to stay where they can sleep overnight and partake in their sports or whatever they do, there are thousands of people who are looking for a property like this.
Sure.
But they need somewhere to stay overnight. They don't particularly want to camp, and they need a healthy environment, and that's where, you know, dry composting toilets come in, and affordability. You know, if they can stay overnight for $30 or $40, they'll come out here for 3 nights and partake in their sports and leave again. But if it's $200 or $150, that's just unaffordable. And this is the and there's room here for hundreds or thousands of people if it's organised.
Sure. And we'll actually showcase some of that stuff in the video that we'll have a little tour around and put some of that stuff in. But just as you're talking then, my mind does move in inventive spaces. There's no reason why we couldn't create an alternative to Schoolies Week here, where kids come and do kayaking and you know, the forestry sort of experience and the nature and something alternative to the unsustainable notion that they can only do a certain end of school activity. So many players would come into those spaces because they're all looking for something a little bit different. And if you create the option to invite them in, the difference can materialise.
Yeah, and the other thing that's missing to some extent is an education centre to actually teach people how to use an outdoor space for their activities. They're all so stuck in their rooms with their computers, and just to have them out here, and you know, where computers don't even work and the phones don't work, young people especially need to experience this, and where they have 2-3 days of zero communications with the outside world, and just live amongst the animals and the birds and the greenery. You know, it's just beautiful out there, and not enough people experience it anymore. It's really sad.
Well, I'm really keen to support your endeavours in this space, because in previous interviews I've spoken with people who own 6-acre properties or 50-acre properties, and they're very keen on wellness hubs or education, cooperative uses of their own property. And you mentioned about the affordability of housing. There's many industrial innovators who can create, you know, housing cabins or structures, built forms that are very affordable, and they're built locally and they use sustainable products. Inviting those people into those spaces can create the development pattern that you, in your vision, actually merits and warrants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, see, in some way, I see the property, the 3,000 acres, is a bit like a huge shopping centre, and there's probably room for 10 to 20 different tenants basically who can come in and say, if they came to me and said, look, we haven't got the money to buy land, but we want to start an education centre for handicapped people or something like that, whatever, a country experience. I'll say, look, I'll give you the land, you build just the structure that you want, and you just pay me a little bit of money just for the people that come and stay overnight. That way the whole thing becomes affordable. But at the moment, most ventures are not affordable because they have to pay so much money for the land.
And the reason they have to do that is they're separated, they're isolated, they're divisive over the squabble of the land itself.
Yeah.
So you're saying to people, I don't want a squabble of the land, I want a cooperative outcome that's mutually beneficial to all parties who might value the land.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm fortunate in the fact that I'm the only owner of the property, so I'm not a company that needs to maximise profits.
Sure.
That's not a huge issue for me. But the thing has to work. But we can just share the expenses, and I can make it work depending on the sort of deals that get put to me,
Well, I can make it work for you in terms of that leasing sort of mentality. We can open up a leasing cooperative mentality. We can bring in the global systems experts and communicators who can bring the various diverse groups into a space that warrants further exploration of potential. Because this is potentially an exemplar model of what could be.
That's right. And I do envisage starting an outdoor education foundation, which will be a not-for-profit, which actually provides outdoor activities for all the groups in the cities who don't have the money to take kids camping and all that. And I'm very keen, as it is, it already happens to some extent. We get groups out here that come and with, again, handicapped people and all that, who experience the kayaking and the ropes courses and all that, and it's just wonderful to see these people enjoying that, And so that's the vision I've got. It just needs, it needs people to know about it, I guess.
Sure.
Once they do, then things will start flowing, I think.
Well, I'd be very happy to showcase what you're offering at the convention, and I've put out there that the actual program itself can be iterative and inclusive. There's no reason why one of the sessions couldn't be a real-time scenario planning with many interested parties who could value being part of your vision.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. I heard a program the other day about a particular retirement village where just for once every person in the retirement village is allowed to have a pet, and the amount of drugs that they now don't use, and that the people live longer, and it is working so well. And the part of the village could become that, where there are, every person has it, whether it's a goldfish or a bird or a dog or a cat. Cats are a little bit of a problem. But no, people, especially as they get older, they need a reason to get up in the morning, and in a lot of cases they don't have that.
And even you mentioned about cats, there are netting and arrangements that you can have it all if you are creative and you do that. And you mentioned about the nursing home or a retirement village there. This is the perfect place for a retirement village. A lot of the farmers in the community have got ageing parents. A lot of the farmers, if they're able to have their parents nursed or retire here locally, they can get on and being the farmer and not worrying and not stressing. And as you create an industrial capacity, you create more demand for organic clean food on your property. So it's a proverbial win-win you're proposing.
The other thing that I just want to mention is just mentioning a subject that people don't like to talk about too much, and that's dry composting toilets. The system at the moment with sewage treatment plants, and I'm even listening to the news this morning, they're now discovering that all the chemicals that are pouring out of sewage treatment plants into the oceans, even though they're supposedly clean water, are actually full of drugs from contraceptives and from all the other things that are in water which can't be filtered out.
Sure.
And it's going out into the ocean and killing wildlife, killing sea life, and it's just horrible. And the dry composting toilets now have been developed so much that all the toilets now the new technology is that they actually have urine diverting toilets, which makes composting toilets work really, really well. And when you add charcoal and sawdust into the toilets, you end up with a product that is fantastic to replenish the forest.
Sure.
And it's a circle that just works beautifully. You know.
And that circular economy, ecology and enterprise is bubbling up everywhere around the world. And my ambition is to shine a spotlight on this region where we could connect all of the ideas to themselves and to each other to be a real development sustainability model.
That's right, that's right.
And your project could be one of the centerpiece focuses of the convention, and I thank you for your involvement.
Pleasure.
Anything else you want to share with the group?
No, I think we'll leave it at that for the moment, and hopefully we get the interest that the property deserves for the planet.
Good on you. Now, hope is an interesting word.
Right.
We can do better than that.
Right.
The vision deserves all of the support that it will muster because it, in and of itself, warrants it.
Right, okay. There you go.
It's all coming, Peter.
Good on you.
Good on you, man.
Thank you.